informative and contains my opinion and understanding of the subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live. All right. So we already have somebody in here, so that's good. So we'll give it a second for people to come in. Awesome. So today we're going to go over a behavior breakdown of Rex Heuermann. Did I just say that wrong?
No, I think that's how he says it. They say it a couple different ways. But
yeah, I know. I'm like the name, like the way that he spells his name, I feel like it would be said one way, but then I feel like, I don't know.
I've heard them say Heuermann. I've heard them drop the R, so.
I agree. Hi, look a squirrel. Howdy. I'm down the shore, you guys, so hopefully my little computer that does while we're down here. We're just praying for that. And then tomorrow night, like why people are coming in, if anybody like rewatches this on the replay crew, I will be on at 8 o'clock with Daniel from the Drunk Turkey Show. And then Sunday at noon, I will be on with Pastor Melody Williams. I met her at Camden County College through Mike, believe it or not. But she I don't know, people have seen my She Rises videos on here. And she's the one that did that with me. So we did that first, and then I started this. Yep. So she called me and was like, I want to restart up. And I'm like, I kind of already started something, but you can come on whenever you want. So she's going to come on Sunday. So let's see what happens.
Nice.
All right. Who else is here? Let's see. So we have a look at Squirrel. We have a couple other people coming in. We could start too. So we're going to talk about Rex Heuermann. At least that's how I'm going to say his name. And we're going to give our opinion on what we think is going on with him. And just so everybody knows, we did not speak about this beforehand. Not that it matters if we did, but I'm just letting people know that we did. So we'll see where we go, and we'll see what we not agree or disagree, but you know what I mean, where our brains are with this when it comes to Rex. So if you were to, unwarranted opinion, welcome. If you were to start us on, what did you find in your research was the most important component of this?
I thought that...
Or what stood out?
I think the one thing that really intrigued me about him, I will say, is how organized he was, and how detailed oriented he was. I mean, obviously, he is someone who did not want to get caught, and so went through a lot of different venues and methods to really practice what he wanted, what the fantasy for him was. I kind of think of him as an organized lust killer.
Okay, so tell people what that is. So in case people don't know,
it's someone who will commit a lot of sexual homicides, but they're planned, they're controlled, they're methodical. These people are very cunning in a way. They're also very socially adept. So even though people thought he was socially awkward at times, he had enough social awareness to seek things out, get along with people, live that dual life mentality. And then I thought something that was really interesting too is when you're this lust killer, you're fantasy driven, but there is also a lot of engagement with mutilation and dismemberment, which he did a lot of, or so we think. So
he did. Well, right. This is all alleged, you guys, in our opinion. Hi, Titanium Bill. I'm so glad that you're here, Tanya. I watch you all the time. Okay, so yes, I totally agree with you. One of the things that stood out to me, that I couldn't help but see, was the fact that his dad dies when he's 12. I don't know if it's just because I'm so into attachment theory and identity development, but I'm that has to, and again, I think that it is important to put it out there that not everybody who loses a parent at 12 turns out to be a Rex Heuermann type thing, right? However, there are some people that if they have the genetic predisposition and then something from the environment that could. And I do think that also, does anybody know, I don't know if anybody or if you or anybody in the chat knows how his dad died. I feel like I wasn't able to find out how he died. I just know he died.
I didn't see anything, but I mean, it sounds like it was probably out of the blue. It sounds like he didn't really live a healthy life, the dad. Not that we have a
Ooh.
lot of info on the background, but just by what the cousins say and family members and so on, his dad was kind of like a scary dude. So I don't know whether that also went along with alcoholism or something like that, but it seems like it could definitely play a commonality there.
Absolutely. And I think that his relationship with his mom is something worth looking into.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also the fact that he stayed in his family home. That was a big one to me too. And he's an architect and his home looks the way it does.
Yeah, well, I think that sets precedent to the shrine mentality that he was trying to formulate in the mental health scheme of things. You know, like if you had an issue with your dad and your mom and there was a lot of neglect there or at least verbal abuse of some sort within the house, which it seems like there possibly could have been. I think because he didn't have control or really understand what was going on, especially when dad died and now he's left to figure it out, he kind of shrined his house as a tribute to his dad in this really messed up way.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So
and then keeps it unchanged. And Asa, like Tanya saying it, she says, I feel that he wouldn't let Asa change anything. I agree with that. So, and a lot of that could have been him being very like rigid in his thinking and stuff. And it can also be that he was hiding shit. He had a whole room.
I mean, the Asa thing too is weird for me because they didn't really, I know that they met, you know, end up getting married, but she's from Iceland. But I was like, in my head, I'm like, okay, but was she like a mail order bride of some sort? Because that's kind of like goes with the mentality of him keeping, you know, like I need no real attachment to someone, but I need to save face. And bringing this woman who has a son, we can have another child. I don't know. The relationship just seems weird to me.
It's so weird. But I also, I try to take into consideration, I think she worked at like a gas station or something when he met her. But I think for that, and I have heard a lot of that mail order stuff. Mom, I love you. You can hear that. The water. No, you could just hear it. I love her. Sorry, you guys. I'm down the shore. I love you, Mom. But when it comes to Asa, I think that I just realized, I didn't know this till I was doing a little bit of research today, that he was married before her for a year. So, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but when I was looking up information, it said that he was married once before for a year. I feel like he needed her so that he could show everybody that he's a normal guy and has a normal life and he's a good dad and a good husband, but that at the same time, he needed somebody who was vulnerable enough to where he could come in and like be the hero. She even says in that, I haven't seen that docuseries. I really want to say it.
Oh, I watched it twice.
Did you? I need to watch it. Is it worth watching? I should watch it.
It's worth watching. I mean, the second episode is not necessarily worth watching because that one's more about the politics of what was going on and why it was so poorly handled from the very beginning. But the first and last episode are important.
Oh, okay. I'll definitely check them out then. So, Look, a Scroll says, so I've never really heard a lot about interpersonality traits bleeding into serial killer styles. But I feel like the whole engineer aspect and the level of planning and improving speaks to base peers. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely tends to, if we're looking at something like the big five and personality traits and on that spectrum, he definitely seems high on the conscientious scale, very motivated, very organized, all of that type of stuff. And so that definitely bleeds into the why he was the serial killer he was. Because if you're not methodical, then you would have seen a lot more chaos. And that's just not who he is. Even like his cousin said, he was never an outsider in the family. He was the organizer. And so, again, it seems to stem throughout his entire life.
That's such a good point. I totally agree with that. And I think that just like an architect would, he pays attention to detail, which is why when she said about how he, what did she say, how his level of planning improved over the years? I think it was just that. When we look at this document, I think what we're going to find is, everyone, is that he like updated it. My mom does this. So like if we have like a family party and something, she'll be like, for next time, only make 4 pounds of meatloaf, or stuff like that. So I feel like that's literally what he did, but with this. Like, so every time he does this, he like updates it so that he knows how to better plan it for next time. Did
even
you get
set
that
reminders for himself of what not to do? So it was like beyond just regular organization.
Yes. And we're going to get into that, you guys. I have the document. We're going to look into that. So right now, I just want to go over like some of the basics things that we see and why we're waiting for people to come in. But we also have, so I also think Asa is really in love with him, Lucas Girl says, and I actually agree with you, but I also think she's not stupid herself, right? So she even says, like, one of the clips from the documentary was her saying that she divorces him, but not because she was like not in love with him or she was like, disgusted by the accusations. She's like, I did it for financial reasons. What the fuck? Like, what is that? You know what I mean? And I hear that he has a net worth. I looked it up and he has a net worth of like $3 or $4 million, which I think like your house looks like that.
But I think that's on purpose.
Yes, I do too, because he has a shrine of his dad. I totally agree with that. 1,000%. So wait, let me pull up this. And then just so people know, they do have a daughter together. And I believe his daughter works with him at his architectural firm, if you will. And he winds up getting caught. One of the things that I was really surprised about is that he had a very different truck. I was like surprised that it took so long to catch him. Like it wasn't like in the Bryan Kohberger piece.
So in the docuseries in episode 2, that's where all the political shit kind of comes into play, because they disregarded basically. So the woman who got this started, Shannon Gilbert, she made a phone call after being escorted to this place. They were willing to pay her. And the guy was like, goes out to her driver and was like, you need to come in and get her. She will not leave my house after all the deeds were done or whatnot. And she ended up going into this complete mental breakdown, banging on neighbors' doors. They're calling the cops. She's saying people are trying to kill her, but nothing is happening. But then all of a sudden she runs away and now they can't find her. And so
the one that they were looking for, and then they stumble on the other bodies.
Correct. Yeah. And so they didn't want to go into the marsh where she was found eventually after all these other people. And so she was the one who really started the process. But because the story was so crazy, they weren't making the connections. And so there were like people who knew her, other things that had happened where people saw this man, said it was weirdness, all this kind of stuff. And in the docuseries, you learn about this one woman who does end up dying, but gets away from him the first time. And her 2 male friends tell the cops, this is what he's driving. This is what he looks like. But again, because these are high risk girls, I think they kind of threw it to the side and went
1,000%.
Which is horrible, but
horrible. And I think that was by design too, right? Who he, his victims.
Yeah, because if there's so much going on, it's hard to focus in. And then in 2022, when it was starting to be relooked at, because now all the political stuff is out, there's new people in law enforcement, they see this affidavit of this guy describing the student as like, we've been looking for him for the last decade. So they've had this guy the whole time, unfortunately. The whole time.
And then I like how many people, and I feel like we only know of 7, but I feel like there's no way, in my opinion, that there's only 7.
No, there's way more, especially since his very first one they thought was 1993. So that's 30 years that this man has been,
and you don't just kill 7 people in 30 years.
No, there's more.
I mean, I would feel like
if they really wanted to go back and look at every time his family went on vacation, we're probably going to find more.
Oh, I totally agree. Shannon was her name. Thank you so much, Tanya. I was like on the tip of my tongue. Yes. Hi, Scarlett. All right, Harlot. I say Scarlett every time. I don't know why I do that. And I know that you're Harlot, and it's just, anyway. So I agree with you there. And I think that, I wonder if that's why Asa is still in like such, like, I feel like she's in denial, but I feel like it's like I feel like she knows she's in denial. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think like anybody who's close to something like this, you're like, it can't be my husband. It can't be my kid. It can't be my whatever, and especially since he is living that dual life. Everybody who knows him says he's friendly. They don't, they think the house is creepy. Yes. But they've never had anything that said like he was completely a wackadoodle.
So I think we've seen that with Ted Bundy, right? Because people were like in shock about it. They were like, there's no way. But in a different way than with Kohberger. I feel like with Kohberger, it's more like YouTube people that think that he's innocent and not necessarily like the media, where with Bundy, it was like the media that was like, we read that whole document, right? Where they were like, there's no way. And here, you know, so I feel like he has that narcissism where, did you see the interview he did? And he says that the hammer's his favorite. I'll have to show you that. That one was like, oh my God. Oh, it was crazy. It's like really quick. It was a quick interview, but somebody found it after his arrest and was like, oh, like this like means something now that, so they thought nothing of it at first, but now they definitely do. But I definitely have to get that. So hold on. Rex Huerman interview. It's right here. Oh my gosh.
In a couple of interviews I saw, he's like a completely normal dude. Like there's nothing special about him. You'd forget him walking past, which I guess makes the best serial killers when they're forgettable, but also engaging at the same time.
1,000%. So let me put this up real quick. It's like a 2-minute thing, not even. But I think it like really gives you, and not you personally, but like an idea of it's so creepy. All right, hold on. Let me just add it to the stage. All right, you guys, this is like creepy if you haven't seen it.
Sending back workshop.
So
I have one tool that's pretty much used in almost every job, and it's actually a cabinet maker's hammer.
Cabinet maker hammer. Okay.
It is persuasive enough when I need to persuade something.
Not someone.
Something. And it always yields excellent results.
Tell me that wasn't like creepy, right? So, I mean, and I think that, that was creepy. And I think that, like he said, he doesn't say like to somebody, he says like he made it to where it was like an object. And I think that that's also how he saw people, was as an object, which I think a lot of serial killers do. I think that that makes it easier for them to go ahead and to depersonalize somebody enough to be able to do this. What do you think?
Well, I think too, if you look at, if we like, in the docuseries, the cousin kind of talks about some of the things he says, and he says, you know, there was always stories. We called him Dear Rex. We all loved him. However, there was a lot of rage, anger issues. You were walking on thin ice around Rex's father. The dad always yelled at the mom. Mom never felt like she can leave. So this is coming from his cousin. And so I feel like if that actually was happening the whole time, he also didn't have that control then. And so now it, you know, and he didn't see if his mom was looked at as a possession, then obviously I think again, he was looking at his dad, idolizing him. That's why the kind of shrine to the house is the same way. And now you're treating women the exact same way.
Oh my God, that is so real, right? So I totally agree with that. So it goes to show how much learned behavior is really a part of our lives. So even when we don't think that we're learning behavior from our parents or whatever, he would. So the selfie pic, I was just getting to that, Tanya. Wait, do you see this? It's like creepy. So here goes another one I have real quick, just to show you. It's a little creepy. All right, here we go. So what's up with these guys taking selfie pics in the bathroom? I don't know. Like Kohberger did the same thing. Like, what's up with that? Is that like a serial killer thing? I don't know. All right, so let's look at this real quick. Let's just look at his picture. It's a little creepy.
From ABC7 New York, this is Eyewitness News Extra Time.
Oh, I did.
Oak Beach, and police believe there may be other bodies out there.
Yeah, and Liz, the barrier islands.
Did anybody see her fabulous hair? That was fabulous.
Town of Babylon, an extensive search that goes on for a good mile along the bay here south of the town of Babylon. You could see crime scene investigators there, and then Tony, if you want to come back out, you can see behind me, and then clear up the beach right here.
You guys, we're going to show you
cell phone activity to 4 separate towers around the area of Massapequa Park, where they converged today. But they say HUERMAN was positively ID'd back in March of 2022. First, after a witness described him, then a description matching his Chevy pickup truck, then data listing his address in the so-called box here, Massapequa Park, where all the cell calls were being traced.
Rex HUERMAN is a demon that walks among us. A predator that ruined families.
But there is
So then they go forward and they show us his home.
Her phones,
Oh, wait, look
which
at
he
this
then
one.
posted online to search for escorts, to search for sex, frankly, and perhaps lure his alleged victims. We also learned about how they used DNA to match him to the victims with whom he is charged. Hairs that did not match those victims that belonged to a man that were found on the scene so many years ago.
So real quick, what do you think about that hair? Because didn't they find Asa's hair there too? And what do you think about that? Like, do you think that there's more to that, or do you think that that's just like?
No, a lot of people believe that it was just transfer because they think he was killing these women in the basement of their home. And so I don't think they had anything to do with it, actually.
No, I don't either. And I also think that I do think, however, that the reason I think a lot of people, well, one, because she still goes and visits him and calls him her hero, and she just is in total denial. So I think that's one reason why people are like, what's going on here? Or like, did she know anything? But I don't think she knew anything either. However, did you hear about, like, and I don't know if anybody else heard this, that he had like swingers parties at his house? And I feel like if he did, that we really shouldn't judge. Like, if that worked for them, then that worked for them. So I'm not judging on that. But I wonder what you think about if that's why you like people might be thinking more, or do you think it just has to do with it? Like, why don't people suspect other wives? Like, I feel like she's getting a lot of attention, like more so. Is it just because she's still in denial? Like, what do you think?
Well, if they did have swinger parties, then I think that her denying the fact that she didn't know that her husband had anything to do with this, physically, you may not have known, but there is definitely a very specific sexual innuendo, sexual fantasy that's played out in these swinger parties. So obviously you knew that your husband had some of these fantasies, whatever they were, because at a swinger party, it is a male-female dominated area where the female actually dominates more than the males.
And a lot of times that's by design too, right? So
that's
like
by
if
design. So it's safe for
Exactly.
women. And so if you're married, you can't come alone. You have to bring your significant other. And there will always be more women there than there are men. From all the research I've done on swinger parties, but
I know, and you seem to know a lot about this. I know you don't read a lot.
I read a lot, but I think that should trigger something in your mind that he is into way more sexually than what you're telling us. You knew nothing about any of he would never have these fantasies. Well, maybe he would.
I agree. And I think that goes to her being dependent on him financially and stuff like that. And the fact that like he took in her son, who I believe has special needs and stuff, and I think she felt like he opened her, like he gave her like open arms and he helped her. So I could see why she's in denial a little bit, but after all the evidence and like after he was arrested and you got to go walk through that house, like there was nothing that was like.
When we talk about the evidence that they found on his computer, that should be enough for you.
You are so right. So Tanya says, or maybe if he did swing, she wouldn't think about that. So this is what I have to say about this. As soon as I saw this, I thought about when we talked about Bundy, when we did that, when we looked at that paper, when we were looking at what Bryan Kohberger was reading, that paper about Bundy, and they were talking about the different things. One of the things that they said was, or one of the things we picked up on actually, was that he would try to normalize. So instead of calling it the R thing, he would say like an assault, or that like he would like downplay and almost like make it to where it seemed like he was trying to not rationalize, but make it to where other people can identify with something that's so unidentifiable, right? So I feel like that does play to that too. You know what I mean? I think the daughter's hair was found there too.
Yeah, it was.
It was, right? So, all right. So let's go over well, let me just see. Is there anything else in this real quick? I just want people to see his house, just in case somebody is new to this.
It's a shocker. It's scary.
A crime that has captivated the world, a true crime story of movies and books, has come down to this quiet neighborhood in Massapequa Park. Neighbors still can't believe one of the suspected Gilgo Beach killers was living among them.
Oh my God. I think I know who it is.
The crowds only grew throughout the day, from neighbors to people from all over Long Island who wanted to get a glimpse of Rex Heuermann's house. They saw the investigators in hazmat suits, a car being towed out of Heuermann's driveway, and something else hidden under a large tarp. It was like watching a movie. And for those...
Does anybody know what was under the large tarp? That was pretty big. I wonder what that was.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who have been armchair detectives on this case for years.
Let me get for a little bit. There was one thing.
Heuermann is charged only with 3 of those first 4, the 4th likely to be added.
Okay, I think we watched enough of this part. I'm going to go to the other document that we have that we both really looked into. So let me put this up on the share to stage. So here we go. Let's look at this document, because you're right. This has so much in it. And you're right. If I were to find this, a torture table, someone said.
It definitely could have been. I'm not sure if that was the first search warrant that they had that they brought that out, or the second, because apparently there was a second search warrant that was primarily for the basement only, because then they started to realize, I think this is where he did a lot of the torture. And so I'm not sure which clip that was from. So it could have been.
So Mundy says you making money and you live like that. Absolutely. So like we were saying before, we think he was like memorializing his dad. And he literally left everything the exact way it was. I also think, and we don't know this to be true, but just from what I've seen on like the videos, they're hoarders, right? Like, is it crazy to think that they're hoarders?
No.
Okay. I just didn't know if they were, because this is the other thing. One of the things that I saw for the documentary was that she was talking about how they like even cut her bathtub in half and that she had to pick up all the pieces and stuff. So I'm like, is this boxes here because of that, or were they always here? And then I do think in one of the things she says that like, there's a lot of treasures in these boxes, like, but as if like they've been there in the boxes.
Well, maybe that's why people have an issue with her too, because after they did the search and took out all these things and like basically destroyed the inside of the house, her and the kids moved back into that house. Like for me, even if I'm on my husband's side, I'm not sure if I could personally move back into that house. Knowing what is thought to have been there, how much evidence they took, 12 days of evidence they took from that house. That's a lot. That's a lot.
That's a lot. And they had like multiple people there. So it wasn't even like because they didn't have enough staff or whatever. They just needed that much time. I also, real quick before we look at this, right? So if your husband had a spot in the house that you weren't allowed to look at, is it just me, or wouldn't that make you want to look at it more?
It's a red flag.
Right? I feel like if my husband was like, you can go anywhere you want in this house, but whatever you do, like that would be, as soon as he went to work, I would be breaking into that room because I would be like, what is it in there that he doesn't want me to see?
Unless they have a secret dynamic that we are not privy to.
That's the only thing I could think of, is that she was so afraid of what it would mean to lose him, because I'm sure, I don't know if there was any coercive control at all, but I'm wondering if like, even if he like made it, like when people say things like, you'll never find anybody as good as me, like stuff like that. I wonder if he did that type of shit that like made her really think that she couldn't do it without him.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
It seems like he didn't have that much control over her either, because she was allowed, she went on vacation by herself with the kids. Like she seemed.
But I feel like he did that on purpose, right? To get her out of the house.
He definitely did on purpose. But so I don't know whether it was fake control that he apparently was trying to give her. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, look, even other people said they would definitely still go in there. I definitely would. I would feel like, how do you not? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hi, wearing label Nina. Oh, good. The whole family's coming in. So over here, we have the document that we wanted to go over. So this document, let's look at this real quick. I'm going to X out that tab and this one because we're done with them. All right. So let's look at this document real quick. So in the document, This is the first page. And it talks about, this is the planning document. So it begins with a 4-category section with the underlying headings of problems, supplies, DS, and TRG. So do we know what that meant?
Dump sites and targets.
There you go. Oh, there you go. Oh, this is definitely like a how-to guide.
Correct.
This is like a manual on what to do.
They said he had multiple of these planning documents.
Well, I also already had like 300 cell phones, like the burner phones.
Burners. Yep.
Which is why, in my opinion, there's no way that there's only 7 victims.
Yeah.
And could you imagine if there was a victim for every one of those phones? That would be horrifying. And I believe that he would use the victims' phones to like call their family and like taunt them.
He did.
That's
well,
terrible.
he's a sadist. He is
Ed
most
Gein did
definitely
that too, right?
Huh?
Didn't Ed Gein do that too? He would like call the
Yep. Yeah,
It's
we
like a
definitely
whole
know
different
that
level.
he called the sister of Melissa, and she was like 12 or 13 at the time, and he did this for a little while. And then the first one, her name was Maureen Brainard Barnes. He actually called her friend, who was also a sex worker, and was like, "Oh, I think I know your friend. I think I've seen her." Described her to a T, and she's like, "Well, call me back on not a blocked number, so I know, and I could call the cops." And he never called back. And so he taunts these people because he's definitely a sadist on so many levels.
On so many levels. So many levels. Hopefully Sarah's here to hear that because she always wants to talk about sadism. So this is a perfect opportunity, Sarah, if you're out there. So under problems, we have DNA. So you guys, so these are all the things. I also think that the fact that he put this all in cap locks, that also says to me, like, almost as if it was like, so it could be bold so like he doesn't forget. But he has for some of the problems, DNA, which I think is not ironic, but we didn't have as many DNA avenues back in the 90s that we did going on. So I could see how this would be at the top of the list. Like, don't forget, there's DNA. Like, also like tire marks. I think that was another thing. I wonder though, my question to you would be, how much of this do you think that he got from experience, or how much of this do you think that he got from watching others, just like we think Kohberger watched like Bundy and stuff like that? Like, I wonder.
So I do know a partial answer to that question.
Good.
So I think it's part his experience, because he started at the beginning with dismemberment and things like that. And then we see that he moved away from that. And so that's why they weren't linking these together for the longest time, because he had so many different methods. However, he actually read a book called Mindhunter by John Douglas. And in the book, there's 2 that you'll see in this document that he references on page 162 and 163 about sex substitution. So in the book, it says, never have intercourse, use object penetration. So he was using this book to understand how to mutilate correctly, how to, penetrate correctly, how to harm people correctly without getting caught.
Isn't that crazy, right? I feel like he, like where we saw like Bundy as a person that Bryan probably looked into, I feel like he has a lot of commonalities with the Hillside Stranglers.
Yes, he does. So like, I think when I was trying to like research stuff, I thought he was most like BTK and Bundy on a lot of those levels. Yeah. And then you'll see I could see that too. In the documents too, he even mentions, we need to do more recon next time. We need to.
Oh my gosh, you guys, he does.
Definitely learning from himself.
1,000% learning from his own mistakes. And I think that we also see this. So I think one of the reasons that people didn't necessarily put all of the bodies that they found together was because some of them were like wrapped in burlap and other ones were dismembered. I think the dismemberment thing, and this is just my opinion, tell me what you think about this. I think with the dismemberment thing, that it was more about putting the body parts, because if you notice, he put the heads and the hands together. So that says to me that he's thinking about fingerprints and something that's identifiable. I think he also started cutting off like parts of the limbs or whatever if you had a tattoo. So anything like with Peaches, they called her Peaches because of her, right? So I think he eventually learned from that. He probably saw that footage on the news and was like, oh my gosh, like from now on, I can't have anybody with an identifying feature. So I think that that played into it. But I do think that over time, he started to realize that he didn't have to do all of that work as far as dismemberment, that he could just wrap them in burlap and throw them out in there and that nobody was finding them that way. And that was less time that he had to spend so that he could have more time with them. I feel like he tried to think of how he could spend the most time with them, which is so sick. It makes me think like how many of these girls were tortured, not just for like 10 minutes, but for like a day or two.
It's because terrible. If you look off of, we don't find out how long the women were with him. There's never a mention of that between, it's only like a couple days between them going missing and then, because it's so many years after the fact of them being found. And so we don't know, but if we're looking at the vacation aspect of, he doesn't meet up with his family for like 2 or 3 days after they already leave. So it could be that he's holding them for that long because he even mentions in one of the documents
Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm syndrome. So I was like, oh, is that what we're after? Someone to adore you?
Oh, that's such a good point, Anya, because at first I feel like when people were thinking, I think that fits it more than him feeling emotions for them.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah,
I feel
there
like
were no emotions for them.
No, but I think that a lot of people that don't understand how this works, I could see why they would see that, but it definitely makes more sense that it would be more of a sadistic thing.
Yeah, definitely.
It's terrible, isn't it? So over here we have Dr. Vona. Please speak more on the psychology of big goofy male preying on young women that are half his size. So I think that this is pretty like evident in what it says. He's preying on half his size. That gives him just an easier way to control the person that he's preying on, right? So, and I'm sure that there was like a fantasy. I'm sure there was a fantasy attached to it as well. But I don't know. What do you think about that? I do think a big part of it was easier to control.
I definitely think that there's something about easier to control. However, there is something that the cousin had said. He ended up getting beat up one time at school. And he said, even in elementary school, he was always the most huge kid. However, he let people do that to him. And so again, did this man not have control? And now he's putting that into his targets where I definitely just need to make sure I have control. Or does he like the power imbalance where everybody's normally scared of the really big dude. So he's this gentle giant at the very beginning to kind of reel you in a little bit. And then, but when you're not even paying attention, bam, he just is torturing you and you didn't even see it coming.
Yes. And I think he offered, like, because a lot of people are like, well, why did some of these girls go with him? And even the one girl, right, he comes to her apartment and then the roommate gets him to leave or whatever. I think they didn't, like, the roommate was they would like do a thing where before she even got to do anything, he would come in as if he was her pimp and like rob them or whatever. Said, okay,
so this
in that
girl
case,
that I think ends up dying anyway because
yes, she does.
Yeah, because
he humiliates them.
Yeah,
I think that pissed him off 1,000 times more. The fact
he
that
also meets these women prior to doing anything with them. So there were 2 incidents where these women lived. One was actually in Philadelphia, and then one was in New York City. He met, because you have to remember, these are high risk girls, right? Nobody's looking for them. It's high risk on their end because they're sex workers. And so they are wanting to be bought. And that's what he was doing. He had all of these emails. He was on Craigslist. He was buying these women's time originally. And then, so
you're saying that maybe he knew some of these women from prior.
I do.
Gotcha.
But then I think when he started, the 2 women that lived, they caught on to his weirdness. So the one in Philadelphia, he talked her into selling drugs for quick cash. And went to this house and she heard something crazy upstairs happen. And luckily she carried a taser and tased him and ran for her life. And then it wasn't until 10 years later or 5 years or whatever it was, where she saw his face on television being arrested for these murders. And she's like, that's the guy who had me in that place. And then it was the same thing for this other prostitute who had dinner with him. And he was asking her, and he's like, oh, have you heard about the murders? Why do you think they would dump them where they do? Isn't it dark? Wouldn't somebody see him? And he's like asking all, and she was like, I am freaked out. Luckily, she brought her safety guard.
I was going to say, is she the one that drove herself and she like refused to get in the car with him?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if she refused. They were actually at a restaurant, this particular
right.
one.
And I think he tried to get her to get in the car and she was like, I got to go or whatever. And like,
and she had a ride already.
Yeah.
And she was like, he was just asking me about the murders. It was really weird because I think that's when he started to be like, shit, people are looking. People are finding the bodies. How am I going to safeguard myself? And so let me see if I can kill two birds, one stone kind of thing.
And I think that was his way of trying to get information out of her with the intent of her never being able to speak about it.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't think he was being as careful as maybe he would have been if he was speaking to someone else, although he probably wasn't careful then either, because the ego is usually what gets people caught, right? So Unwarranted Opinion says he offered upwards of $1,000, which would make sense, right? So if you could, go see this ogre looking man and then get $1,000 for an hour or two of your time, you could see why somebody might, even if they didn't want to, they're like, all right, well, I don't really want to with anybody, but so if I'm
girl that died, who originally got away from him, he offered her $2,500 to spend the night, but she had to leave her phone, and she did. And that's how she died.
You guys, I think one of the big things here is the fact that he pried on her trust. So he was like, he got her to trust him in some way or trust him enough. So maybe not trust him as like to give her
just
secrets,
the vulnerability of needing money.
The vulnerability of needing money. Exactly. But even if she had in her head that maybe this isn't the best idea, again, I guess it could be the vulnerability of needing money and him knowing that, maybe $1,000 might not have been enough for her. So he puts it up to $2,500 if you spend the night. But that's enough to get her to be like, okay, and I'll leave my phone. Like you had to think that he wasn't going to do anything to leave your phone, I would assume. Although it's also interesting because he used to like take their phone. So that, you know what I mean? So I guess it just depends. So over here, what is cat litter about? Is that to like soak up blood?
Probably. So I don't,
what else that would be for.
MO, like make sure you have plastic bags, cat litter. Cat litter normally is really great at getting rid of smell, wetness,
that too.
Things like that. So that's probably part of, even if you're putting the cat litter in the burlap bag, so it's being deterred by animals or whatnot. Things
that
like
is so true. And you brought up the plastic bags and everything, but I think this is part of the recon thing where he writes like police stop. So I think that was his way of like writing down, like, don't forget that there's like police that stay up here. Like, so I think he was really trying to try his hardest not to get caught. Under supplies, he has everything from booties to, what did you think about him writing lie, LIE?
Well, he misspelled a lot of things. So I'm thinking you're either in a really rush when you're doing this, or I don't know, because I don't think you're an idiot. You have $1 million company, but
absolutely. And I think it is true. You could be very intelligent and not be able to spell too.
Wrong too, with only one N.
Exactly. So I wonder though, could he have been doing any of this so that, like, when you search a Google document or any document, you could like search lie or whatever. And if I were to search it the right way, it would be a real red flag. But if I just put in LIE, like I might not even put in LIE because I'm looking for something. So I don't know if there's part of this. So this was either like a master manipulator and he was doing this on purpose to like evade people, or he just couldn't spell. But I don't really think either one is, really giving us a huge insight into him. But I do think that if it was just misspelling, that is possible. So just like people say that Kohberger couldn't have been able to do all that stuff by himself, I also think that two things could be true as far as you could be intelligent, own $1 million company, and still not know how to spell. So that could be true as well.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So foam drain cleaner?
Mm-hmm.
What's
that
for?
Declog. Probably to declog, get rid of any hair residue, those types of things. So because he should say, like, in one of these documents, he says, make sure you, after dismemberment, you clean inside and outside the body.
Oh my gosh, the cavities?
Yeah, all the cavities. Clean them.
I was like, what the actual? Right? And then he winds up leaving his hair on more than one.
Yeah.
But even the recon for like the dumpster location, and then he has the saw for cutting tools. So he doesn't even write like just saw. He writes saw and then puts cutting tools, dumpster location. Like I feel like he probably didn't think anybody was ever going to see this. And
no,
I
because
guess
he erased it all from his computer.
Oh,
But
that is true.
he
I
obviously
forgot
didn't know how to erase it properly. And so
You're
they
right.
were able to grab it off of there.
You're right. People don't realize that if you go in and you factory reset your phone like Stephen Stearns did, that unless you rewrite over top of the material, they can get it back.
Yeah.
So but again, for being such a smart guy, like he missed, and same thing with BTK, he missed it with the computer as well. So maybe it was just technology and stuff that caught up with him too. But for DS, so for dump sites, he puts down Mill Road, then question marks, dumpster site. Next time, recon dumpster sites, which I think is so telling. I don't know what DS2 question marks is, so maybe he knows.
I
if there's
think
one
he was trying to have a second dump site. He just didn't
That's
know
what I
where
was
he
wondering.
wanted it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so he had to go do recon to see if there were any cameras and stuff like that, or if there were cops around there. And then for what was the last one? Target?
Yeah.
Target 1, Megan. So there was somebody named Megan that dies, and it said small is good. She was small. And then there was something about, it says, what does that say?
Target unknown black.
So could that have been her boyfriend? I think the Megan.
I don't know.
That
So
passed
like
away
in the
had
docu-series, the only black person that I saw that he had
Peaches?
contact with was actually his secretary, who worked with him for like
Oh.
15 years. She was a woman
about
who
Peaches
was
and her
probably in
baby?
his 40s. So, or maybe it's just someone that he saw that he liked and didn't know what her name was.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So this could either be a victim or it could be, because I think he was also looking at like the people that they would bring with them. So like things like security, or if they had a boyfriend. I think he did take that stuff into consideration as well. So, and even the girl, what was it, Shannon? I'm sorry if I missed.
Whose driver was Asian, and then they found a body of an Asian male dead amongst the bodies.
Yeah, but did they think it was him?
They didn't say, but I think it's almost like they feel like it's implied, because he's still just number 8, body number 8, the Asian man. But her driver was an Asian guy. When
he left her there, right?
And he left her there, but the police questioned him for a long time. So I don't know if it is him, and then maybe Rex had to go back and clean up his mess.
No, I'm thinking that was a different person, and I don't know if anybody knows in the. I'm sure they'll let us know. So wait, let's see what people are saying here real quick. The mind can trick you to think that everything is good. Oh, that's true. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Monday, I love your brain emoji. I use that all the time. It's like my favorite emoji. So, all right, the next thing over here real quick is. Oh, wait, this is really small. Let me make this bigger. No, it's not making it much bigger. What's on this one that I can't say?
Recon report.
Is that what it is?
Yep. Recon reports, takedown, pickup, body prep, dispose of the following. I think I hand wrote some of these down, actually.
Is this the one, too, where he says about washing in the cavities?
Yeah, so it says that you want to wash body inside and outside and all cavities.
Which would say to me that there's a reason why you would have to wash out the cavity, right? Because you clearly entered
I guess if you're just taking extra precaution to, especially if you were mutilating or penetrating the body in some way.
Well, that's what I was thinking, penetrating.
Yeah. So yeah, and then you want to package for transport, remove the head and hands, it says on there. And that
would be for identification, right?
Correct. Or at least it will make it harder to identify all of them, because the dismembered bodies are still both in Long Island, but in 2 separate places.
Oh yes, that's right. And and I think that after a while he like stopped even like doing that much to.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I feel like he was just like whatever. I do want to like, well, in the middle of this real quick. Oh, hi Sarah. So I do think it's safe to say Sarah just came in. Sarah, I don't know if you missed it, but Dr. Schultz and I agree that this is a sadist. So sometimes Sarah will ask me, like, do you think this person, like, or I don't forget who it was. Was it Stephen Stearns? I don't know. Or Brian? I don't know who it was. But I wasn't feeling like the whole sadism thing, whatever it was. I don't remember. This one, 1,000%. I see it. I feel it. And I even think, you guys, that he's a picarist. So a picarist, yes, Sarah, sadist. So finally you got your sadist here. But I do think that he's a picarist. So I have just real quick in the middle, I know we're in the middle of the document, but I want to show people what picarism is, because I think that he is one, and I just want to show people so I could get what you think. It's really quick. It's a quick short, but just to see what you think too. And I know you know this stuff, but just for other people. So wait, let's look real quick. Let me make this bigger. So this is one of my shorts. Wait, let me put it on the stage. Hold on. I forget to do that sometimes. Add to the stage. All right, here we go real quick. It's only like a minute.
Some wounds tell a story, and some scream obsession. Let's talk about picarism. Picarism is a rare paraphilia, where someone is sexually aroused by piercing another person's skin. Think needles, knives, anything sharp. But here is the disturbing part. It's not about killing. It's about control, power, and intimacy through pain. The wounds are often focused on the thighs, buttocks, or breasts. This isn't random. It's ritualistic. In abnormal psychology, we classify it as a paraphilic disorder. It's rare, but when it shows up, it's a huge red flag. Some of the most infamous killers show signs of it. Jack the Ripper, his wounds weren't random. They were targeted and deliberate. Richard Chase, the vampire of Sacramento, didn't just stab and mutilate it. He wanted to feel something through it. That's textbook picarism. As a psych professor, I've studied hundreds of deviant patterns, but this one, it sticks with you. When a crime scene shows this kind of precision, you are not looking at someone who lost control. Instead, you are looking at someone who needs to feel like the one in control in a situation. And let me be clear, this, psychologically speaking, is way more terrifying in my opinion. Follow for more breakdowns.
Okay, so what do you think about him being a picarist? I would say that it's safe to say that he's a picarist.
I would say,
right, because he got like satisfaction out of.
Definitely,
he got satisfaction.
I wish they would tell us more about the bodies. I feel like even in the docuseries, there wasn't much about what was done to the bodies, except for strangulation, dismemberment, but they did not go into detail saying that there were certain holes in certain places, that they were mutilated in sexual organs. Like, they never mention any of those things at all.
Were they able to tell? Because weren't some of the people not found for like...
Well, I think what the problem was is most of them were skeletons.
That's what I mean. So I don't know if they were able to tell.
So you wouldn't have even...
I guess we wouldn't even know that he cleaned out the cavities if we didn't see his own writing. Like, he tells us.
Correct. But I mean, with the saw, there's definitely a mutilation perspective that he takes on. So I definitely could see the picarist. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
I mean, I would say a lot of sadists go that route too. There's something about the bleeding. There's something about the control. There's
and the cutting, right? And being like in control of like.
Correct.
So you guys, I just in case anybody's on here and these words aren't, not always, but I sometimes forget that we hear these things more often. So just in case anybody's like, what the hell are they talking about? I just showed what a picarist is. A sadist is somebody that enjoys watching other people hurt. And not hurt like just like, I hurt your feelings hurt, but like physically hurt. Like I just cut you and it gives me great pleasure, or it gives me great pleasure to see that I change you and you can't get away. So anything where you're like physically like a picarist, if I cut you and I'm getting something out of that, that's sadistic. I don't know. What would you add to that, if anything?
No. Again, I think, control is the big part about that, which with a lot of these things. And he obviously has a control issue.
Sarah brings up a really good point here. Sarah says that blood is the embodiment of life leaving the body.
It's definitely a lot of control over who, what's happening to that person, how it's happening to that person. So yeah.
Hi, Truth.
It's personal. Anything that's like this to me too. That's why I think there is something that stems from his childhood, because most people do not pick to be that up close and personal with their victims. And he is highly up close and personal, which seems personal to him.
I really think we're going to find that there's a huge part that goes back to his dad and even his relationship with his mom. And I'm sure there are like biological predispositions, but I do think that this is going to be a classic example of how your environment can really, change that in one way or the other. Yeah. Right? Okay. So he wants domination. Absolutely. I agree with that. Easy access, high-risk victims. Yes, we did talk about the high-risk victims. So I do think that Shannon's family, they wanted to know where she was. So I just don't think that he was like ready for that. I think that a lot of the other people, even the Asian male is still, and wait, Peaches, I think they finally did find out who she was. But even for a while, like it took a lot of time for these people to get identified to begin with. So that just says to me that he wasn't wrong about trying to pick vulnerable people that he didn't think other people would be looking for if they went missing. So, but then with the one, her family is like, oh no, like I want to know where she's at. So I do think.
Well, I think this goes back to how poorly they investigated this, because there was actually someone who was arrested for 2 women's murders that ended up being not guilty for their murders. And now they're attached to Rex. And so again,
I didn't know that.
I think they were so confused about all the different ways of dismemberment that they saw that they thought it couldn't possibly be. However, everybody else was in their face and like, dude, they're all in the same area. You can't tell me this is coincidental that we have over 11 bodies here. Come on. Like it just doesn't make sense.
I agree with that. Have you ever heard of the Karina Sanders case? I have not. And I'm going to ask Truth to send me a link to something that I could watch about it. But somebody else in the chat asked if we thought they were connected, but I don't know about that case. I don't know if you do.
I don't know about it either. I'd have to see.
Okay, what about the fact that they're trying to connect them now to like to ones in Las Vegas, and like you said, even the girl from Philadelphia.
So again, if you know that this girl had met him in Philadelphia as a sex worker, it is good possibility that he killed here. As well. You just met one sex worker while you were working here, because if he's an architect and you're in the tri-state area, basically, you may work out of New York City, but you're
definitely going to Philadelphia downtown for sure.
Yeah.
Just to go look at the buildings and stuff to get ideas. Like he definitely, I could see why he would be here.
Yeah. I mean, Las Vegas may be a stretch, but I think they're keeping a lot. Like even in the docuseries, they didn't really, because I think he was just arrested. Like that's the crazy part to me. He was just arrested.
I can't believe that.
All right. Like we've only been dealing with this and really knowing about this for what, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, in total. He hasn't even been given a date for court. He's pled not guilty to to the original 4. And then I think they added 2 on to him that he's also pleading not guilty, even though there is evidence, DNA evidence.
Why do you think he's pleading not guilty? Because there's so much evidence. The only thing I could think of is, wait, what does this one say? Philly is real petty, no doubt.
Real pretty, no doubt. Yeah.
Oh, pretty. I thought it said petty. I'm like, oh my gosh, which I would have agreed with because I live here. So he had a timeshare in Vegas. Shut up.
Oh, is that
unwarranted?
What it was?
Thank you for saying that. Because I did see something where it wasn't just like one person, it was like 4. And I was like, so if it wasn't him, I feel like if they found commonalities, then what's there, another
So I would be surprised if there wasn't another docuseries that came out, because the docuseries, I think they promoted like back in January, like right after he had been arrested. So like how much more information? And at the end of the docuseries, they mention Vegas, but they don't mention anything else except that there was a possibility to a link. And so I'm sure they know so much more that we're just not going to, that they're not going to say.
Oh, I definitely agree with that. 1,000%. Thank you, Sarah. You're the best. And Sarah, I will get you with the wrench, I promise.
I mean, if he's a narcissist, that could be why he's trying to plead not guilty. Even though I'm not fully on the narcissist vibe necessarily 100%, I think he has other issues besides that, but maybe he thinks everything's circumstantial.
No, I agree with that.
A lot of his thing is really on the cell phone and the burners. And that definitely won't be enough. So they're going to have to be able to hold the DNA, or as much as they have of it, they're really going to have to hold on to that, because that's going to be the kicker. But I know in the docuseries, they talked for someone so smart, again, he carried all of these burner phones everywhere he went. So they're dinging off of every place that these women were abducted from.
And isn't the point of a burner phone to throw it out?
Correct. But he used it multiple times.
And he had like 300 of them. So that's why I'm saying there's no way there's 7 victims. Then if there's 7 victims, then we have to believe that his last one was like years before they arrested him, which doesn't make any sense. So we both studied many serial killers, and I don't know of any. Tell me if you know of any, because I don't, where they just one day were like, I'm done. I mean, I could see if they get older, and whatever. But like, as far as like, if you're physically capable, I don't know any that are like, oh, I've done it all, I'm good.
No,
like,
because
I feel
it's
like
like an addiction. You need your next high. He may be able to go a year or two without doing this because he does live a regular life as well. But eventually that's not going to be enough. There's some sort of impulse
which I think is interesting, because when me and Nina, you guys a few nights ago were talking about it, we found a lot of these same things as well with what were we talking about? Bryan Kohberger. So I think that, I don't know. I don't remember what my point was. There was a point behind that, but it wasn't that important. So let's see over here real quick. This next one is I think they like zoom in a little bit. And it says in the things to remember section, there are notes indicating steps to take next time. So for example, considering a hit to the face or neck next time, or using heavier rope for the neck as the light rope broke under stress of being tightened. That's crazy. HUERMAN further opines on the importance of sleep, to not only avoid problems, but also to increase what he refers to as playtime. What do you think about that? That's just...
Well, there's your sadistic.
Oh, yes, yes.
That's sadism, right? If you need playtime, and it's not about the murder is a means to an end. His fantasy is the playtime. It's not the actual.
That's a great point. You're right. And you would think that you would have to complete it, because if not, you could get caught up and then not be able to have fantasy playtime.
One, you probably accidentally killed them, possibly, and that's how one of them started. But then eventually you don't want to get caught because you like your playtime. So you're going to keep them for a couple of days, play with them, but then you have to end once there's nothing to play with.
I can't believe he used push pins to hang drop cloths from the ceiling, not tape.
Yeah, not tape, because tape leaves residue. Tape falls. So
you're right. And tape, you could get it on your finger and stuff, like your fingerprints under it.
Yeah, that, or I think what happened was maybe he uses drop cloths because of his playtime. And if the tape didn't hold, he ended up making a mess. And now I have more to clean up. So you know what? We got to use the push pins because they stay up in there.
1,000%, which is also why, you guys that are watching, this is why so many people might not think that a lot of the bodies were all by the same person, because some of them, like we said, were dismembered. Others were in the burlap. I think, like you just said, I think that he just learned over time that by making more of a mess, by dismembering, he literally just made more of a mess. And that took away from, like we were just saying, his fantasy. So now that's taking away. Now I have to plan for that. I have to plan for cleanup because Asa's going to be home with the kids at a certain time. So like that would be less time then that he has to be with the victim. So I feel like he even learned there that he didn't have to do all of that, that people weren't finding the hands, if you will, or the faces, so, or the torsos even, right? So they weren't finding the bodies to begin with. So he's like, why am I doing all of this extra work? So I think that we're just looking at the progression of a serial killer, right?
Yep.
And I think that it's completely plausible that these are, that all of these people are the exact same because of I agree with that. I think that was the end of that one, was it? All right, I'm going to take us off that part. So, yes, the progression of a killer over time. I totally agree. He learned that from Dexter.
Possibly.
Really? Can you believe that I've never watched Dexter?
Oh, it's so good. There's another one. He, learns how to be a serial killer, but a good serial killer. That
would make total sense.
Yeah, he deals with his cognitive dissonance by only killing bad people. So
he gets to be the killer, right? Yeah, he gets to be the killer that he wants to be, but it's almost like vigilante justice.
Correct. Yep.
Which again goes back to the Ted Bundy thing that we talked about that one time where he tries to make it to where it's normalized. Like what are you guys talking about? This person was a rapist or whatever. Like I just took somebody bad out of society. Like I'm not the bad person, they were. And that makes total sense. I need an ethical serial killer. That's actually 6 Feet Under. Can you believe I've never seen that either? Have you?
Oh, it's good. I haven't seen all of 6 Feet Under. Like I've seen Dexter, but the ones.
How about Mr. Brooks? I get yelled at all the time by everybody in here that watch certain things. I have like a lot of stuff I need to watch. I just blame it on the fact that we always have so much work to do that I just never get the time, but I really do need to look into it. So what else do we have here? Does anybody have questions about any of this or have any questions that Dr. Schultz or I could answer that maybe, you saw somewhere else? If anybody has questions, just put up. I can't believe my computer did. Dr. Schultz is hip. Jamie is not. I appreciate that. And I'm sure I know truth. I said about it that I haven't seen Dr. Brooks. That's why I asked Dr. Schultz. So Sarah thinks that you're hip and then I'm not, which is okay. I love Sarah. She could say that. I'm just not even going to put her thing up here. How about that, Sarah? Okay. I love Dr. Schultz. She's awesome. So a lot of people say they love Mr. Brooks. So I feel like me and you should watch that.
Okay.
I don't know what it's about, but I'm assuming I know what it's about. But I mean, I didn't say it. But everybody tells me to watch it. So nobody was waiting for his responses. Someone shines brighter. Okay. And then let's see what else. Does anybody have any comments, questions, anything? I definitely need to look into Dexter a little bit. A lot of people have told me that. And definitely Mr. Brooks. I'll do that one first. He spent all of his money on playtime. So that's another thing. So Sarah says that. So, and he's sexually sadistic, which I think is important to note because, like you said, we both, and I think one of the things that we can conclude with or bring this all together with is that Dr. Schultz and I don't always agree on every little thing, but I feel like in this case, I feel like it's so out there and non-speculative that it's almost if you've done any education in this field, that I almost see how you don't get to that. If you had to say, and you guys, we are not diagnosing, we know that that's not okay to do, right? On national TV type thing, but national TV, I said, you guys know what I meant, the YouTube streets. But if we were to give our academic suggestion or what we would look into, I would definitely say psychopathy or antisocial personality. I think he was a narcissist. I think he thought he was, and even if he didn't really believe it, I think he thought that he was the best architect. I think he did a lot of telling people he was the best architect type thing. I'm the best that New York has to offer, but people would believe that. So isn't that narcissism pretty much?
Me and you always differ on the narcissistic stuff.
You know.
If anything, he would be a covert narcissist, I think. But in the same time, you're a millionaire. So who's to say that you're not great architect? You know, obviously you are. And I think he was almost, I feel like he would have been more disorganized in this sense, you know, because with the narcissism, if they all like, they never think they're going to get caught, they automatically think that they're amazing. I don't think there would have been a need for the lists that he had, because he would have thought that he just had it under control. I almost think he was too conscientious to be a full-on narcissist, if that makes sense.
Okay. I have to say that when I said like the Bryan Kohberger narcissist thing, I felt like I knew the Bryan Kohberger case enough to really like dig my nails into that one. I don't know enough to dig my nails into this one. So before I say that I definitely think, maybe I should look into it more if you're saying these other things. So I will. With the Bryan Kohberger one, I was like, no, I feel he's a narcissist. Like I had to
Which I agree with you now.
Now you agree, right? So that's why I'm saying maybe I just need to look into this more. Like, could some of it just have been him being a good business person as far as, I mean, what kind of businessman would you be if you were like, oh, I'm kind of good?
So like, even like with the narcissistic thing too, even on the date, right? If he was narcissist, I don't think you'd be fishing for information the way he was, right? Because he's like, oh, have you heard of these? I almost feel like he was trying to gain perspective for himself, where I feel like he would have approached it differently as a narcissist, being like, do you believe
do you
this?
think he thought that she was going to get away that night? Like, I don't know that he thought I think he might have had that conversation with
her. In a restaurant. He couldn't have possibly have thought that full on that it was definitely there, but I think he wanted to make her comfortable. Again, maybe the narcissist thing keeps leaving me every time I think about it, because why would you have brought her to a restaurant and then have to kind of talk her down? If your skills were as good as you think your skills were, you'd be confident in all of the answers and getting her to go into your car. And I don't think he necessarily showed that. I mean, everybody has a little bit of narcissism, you know, obviously you're a millionaire, you've killed all these women, you feel powerful and controlling. But I'm not sure if he knew how to use that perspective to his advantage.
I actually agree with that. I agree with that part. I'm going to have to look into it more. So I will do this one again, obviously, and I'll look into it before then so that I could give a better, but we both agree that he's antisocial, right? And sadistic.
Yeah. Sarah, I do think he wants to appear normal, but for if it was a true narcissistic thing, it is almost hard for them sometimes to not slip up in those situations, especially if the girl is going to counter him in some fashion that he doesn't like. I feel like he would have lost his control at some point in time.
Somebody else said, what if he was getting pleasure? What if he was getting pleasure out of talking about it?
Oh, I definitely think he was. You know, he's a sadist. He likes making people feel uncomfortable. That doesn't necessarily equal narcissism all the time, but it definitely equals the sadist aspect.
I see that. I'm going to look into it more. So I'm not saying that I don't think it, but I'm going to look into it more so that I could give a better, more, you know, where I could be like this or that. Like, I really don't have anything that I could come back with and be like, no, but this, that, or the other. So I do agree with that. The True says about power tripping. I do think that he was on a power trip, but I think a lot of that also could be coming from the fact that he wants to do as good as his dad, or like make his dad proud. And so I think we're going to find out, you guys, that this has a lot to do with attachment, or the lack thereof, that he had with his parents. I think we see that a lot with these killers, and that there's an identity crisis of some sort. So even though he was an architect and this and that, he also was allegedly a serial killer. So it's like, I think this was more of an attachment thing, where like Kohberger, I felt like he had zero identity at all.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I agree. Where Kohberger, I don't think he knew what his identity was and tried to build it up. Where Rex, I think, built an identity, and that's what served him to get away with it so long. And he was able to.
But isn't that narcissistic?
Not necessarily. No.
I guess. This is why I like having this. This is why I like that we don't talk about it beforehand either, because then we can really like.
Because I think sometimes he could just have been smart and been like, I need this so much. And he's already conscientious. How do I put those two together? You know, where I don't necessarily always think a narcissistic person is conscientious. they tend to fly off the seat of their handle at some point in time. And he never really did that in the whole 30 years. Even when he got caught, he never had this off the crazy, I can't believe you would say this about, he never had those reactions like I would think a narcissist does.
I hear you. And looking at us. So I know, I get it. I see what you're saying. I think you're like how just like did the dishes right next to me, like no conscientious. I get that. Makes sense. I get it. Well said. And then we have, wait, what do we have over here? He didn't want everyone to know the person was responsible or he would have disposed of them. So this is a thing though. So I agree with that. True. On the other hand, I also think that just over the years, not that he got lazier, but he just felt like he could have more time with the victims and more time with his fantasy if he didn't do the dismemberment, because that now is a whole new level of things that we have to clean up. And just to dismember, I think takes, I would assume, a while to do.
A lot of effort, a lot of time.
Yes, and you would be tired. So I think as he got older too, he probably didn't have the same stamina maybe that he did before. Or maybe, like I just said before, like maybe it's just been 30 years and he hasn't gotten caught yet. So like he could have just gotten sloppier. Like nobody's caught me. Why am I doing all this work? And now his wife doesn't even believe it. It's just crazy, right? You live and you learn. Exactly, Sarah. I do agree with that. I think he lived and learned. Yes. Okay, you guys. So I thank you so much for doing this again. To become an expert at anything, you have to have a lot of experience.
That's true.
It doesn't take long to dismember. By truth, how would you know? I don't even want to know the answer to that. So that was more rhetorical.
But the way he did it was methodical. So I feel like he took a little bit more care than someone just trying to get rid of a body.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. So even with that, because, right, if you're an architect, you're about the blueprints. So that would almost be like him looking at the blueprints of how to properly dismember. Makes total sense, actually. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Schultz. And I will tell you, so in like a week or so, I'll let you know, but we usually get really good numbers. People like to hear what we have to say. So I do appreciate you coming and hope we can do this again soon, next week or whenever. Let me know. We'll figure it out. I appreciate everybody for being here. Everybody thank Dr. Schultz for being here because we really do appreciate her and we want her to come back. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks.
I appreciate you. The next one, if anybody has any, I'll thank you, Phoenix. Phoenix says he enjoyed the process. A lot of people like how our brains like bounce off of each other. Sarah said, are we all leaving? Yes, Sarah, I'm going to end this one because one, my computer made it longer than I thought it would. And everybody's saying, thank you, Dr. Schultz. Thank you, thank you, thank you. See, I'm telling you, people love you here. Thank you, you guys. People are saying thank you, me too. We love you. Exactly. Or we wouldn't keep coming back. Our one video when we did Bundy has like over 2,000 views.
Oh, really? Well, he's an interesting character, so.
I know. We might have to do another thing on him. People like to talk about that, right? Sarah said that you keep me in line. Thank you.
Well, we're so similar, Sarah, except on that stage. So I'm her yin and yang, you know, when it comes to those things.
For sure.
But yeah.
For sure. I'm like the emotional brain and you're like the logical brain. So together we make like a whole brain like that. You know what I mean? So that's what I think people are saying here. For sure. You're definitely way more rational and logical than I am. I'm definitely more emotional. So when I talk to you guys, a lot of times I tell people like just because I know the answer doesn't mean that I do it, right? I still get emotional. But then I'll call Anya and she'll like talk me off the ledge and I'll be like, you know what? You're right. Like I'm good. We usually don't have the reverse. Anya's usually not calling me like, oh my God, that never happens. It only happens the other way. So I agree with you, Sarah. She keeps me in line. So it says Dr. Vona is starting to gain traction and we're going to have to start sharing her soon. We're going to have to, both beautiful women and teachers. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm loving all these compliments. I guess I could read them as we get off too. I don't have to read everyone. I just like reading them because I'm like, oh, tell us more. But thank you so much for being here. And I will see you next time. And I'll call you or whatever, and we'll figure out what we're going to do next time. And again, if anybody has any suggestions for us, just put it in the comments. I'll make sure I look at them, and then we'll go off of what people want to see. Sound good?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. You're the best. Please like, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed this so that I can continue to bring you content. Thank you so much.